Okay. Well, this individual left a comment related to something that I said, which is that diabetes can be beaten by nearly everybody. And when I say beaten, what I mean is almost anybody, type 1 or type 2 diabetic, can get their numbers below 6.5 to where you're not officially at diabetes anymore and your glucose is not a major problem. And if you're a type 1, you're injecting a lot less insulin. If you're a type 2, your pancreas is making a lot less insulin. And I firmly believe almost everybody, maybe there's a few exceptions, but most everybody can get there below 6.5, and a great many can get into the 5s. Anyway, this person says this: diabetics can do this with a caveat or two. First, the sooner one starts, the less body damage and easier it will be the journey. So I would agree with that. The sooner you start, if you just barely cross the line into diabetes and you immediately turn around and start moving the other direction, you've done yourself a world of good. So the sooner you start, the better. And this individual says, secondly, it takes at least a modest possession of willpower and our determination. Now, if one is personally experienced with the eventual consequences of uncontrolled diabetes, then the willpower and the incentive to be determined should be well established. Type 1 patients have to be more vigilant, yet the benefits are there for them as well. So let me just talk about willpower for a minute. I know willpower is a big deal, and we all understand that willpower is important, but in my mind, I don't really like the word willpower so much. I like the word motivation. Because if you're just talking about willpower, what you're basically saying or thinking, and basically the implication of what you're saying is, well, some people are born with willpower. They've just got it. They're type A personalities. They're strong-willed. They've got a strong will of iron, and they can just will themselves to do better. And there's others, they're just born kind of wimpy and easygoing, lackadaisical. That's just the way they are. It's their personality. Don't expect much from them. I believe anybody can have the willpower it takes if they can get the motivation. It's kind of like if someone comes to you and says, I'll give you $1 million if you can go the next week without watching television. It wouldn't matter whether you had a lot of willpower or a little willpower. If you were convinced they were telling the truth, I can make $1 million if I go 1 week without watching TV. You can bet anybody would do that. Anybody. Big willpower, little willpower, strong willpower, no willpower. Anybody would be able to go a week without watching television if you thought you could get $1 million. And you can take any diabetic who's beginning to see their body disintegrate before them, having complications arise, knowing what's coming, knowing the disaster and the tragedy that diabetes is. And if you can convince them there's a way out, and if you can convince them to use their meter to help judge the foods that they eat or that they avoid, willpower will just appear magically. It'll just show up. And when I think about willpower, I think about Bill Burliant. I interviewed him not long ago. Maybe it's been 2 or 3 months ago. Bill struggled with weight all of his life. He was called fat when he was a big fat slob when he was just a kid, when he was like in first grade or so, about 7 years old. He was weighing something that a middle school student would weigh. And he was big all of his life. He calls it his Goliath. And he said he could never defeat Goliath. And I'm sure if someone had gone to Bill and said, well, Bill, your problem is you eat too much. You got to stop eating so much. Use a little willpower. Just determined you're going to do better and you won't be so big. After all, your weight is hurting you socially. It's keeping you from having girlfriends. It's keeping you, it's causing you to be mocked by your peers. Bill, you just need some willpower. And the fact that it's ruining your life, that surely ought to do it. And Bill never could find the willpower. He just couldn't until he started watching Beat Diabetes and a few other YouTube channels that stress the low-carb diet and using the glucose meter to find victory. And Bill got hold of a glucose meter. He told the story in his interview how he watched me do a video about eating hamburger and how that my blood sugar hardly went up at all the whole day by eating just plain hamburger. Carnivore day, right? And Bill told his wife late in the evening, I'm going to the grocery store. I'm going to go buy some hamburger, and I'm going to try that. I'm going to prove that Dennis Pollock is crazy. So he went out and bought a bunch of hamburger, and the next day he ate hamburger and put some cheese on it. And that was his diet for that day, was a lot of hamburger and cheese. And he watched his glucose meter. He tested himself faithfully after his meals. And lo and behold, he had high blood sugar, so it's not like he was down at 100 or so, but it never went up hardly. And Bill got intrigued and got excited and got enthusiastic, and he began testing more and eating more and trying things and deciding, no, that doesn't work for me, but boy, this sure works, and no, that doesn't work, but this sure works. Guess what? Willpower magically appeared in Bill's heart. He couldn't do it as a kid. He couldn't do it as a teen. He couldn't control himself as a young adult. He couldn't control himself in middle age. But in his older age, with the help of a glucose meter and a little bit of knowledge about how to control your glucose, and he thought he was going to die of diabetes. He was really having a lot of problems. Suddenly, the willpower appeared. But again, I don't really like to call it willpower. I like to call it motivation. He got motivated with a little bitty glucose meter and with some fear from knowing what diabetes could do to him and from excitement of knowing he could control things. He could control his glucose number. So when the person says, well, it takes some willpower, that's partly true and partly not. Yeah, I guess technically it is willpower, but what it really is, in my mind, is motivation. And you get it when you're in a fight for your life and you realize you can win. Let me tell you what takes away all motivation. It's hopelessness. It's just plain hopelessness. It's kind of like when we were kids. And it was time to play softball at school. And so for one way or another, the teams were formed and you go out and you play softball. And after the first inning is over, your team is down like 7-1. And you think, man, we're not doing very well, but maybe next inning we'll get it back. Next inning is worse. After 2 innings, the score is now 18-2. And it dawns on you, you'll never win this. You're outmatched. That other team is so much better than you and your team that you're a loser from this point on. So what happens is you quit trying. You get silly. You make jokes. You get distracted easily because you know you cannot win. You, in your mind, are a loser. And when you think and you're convinced you're a loser, willpower, motivation, any kind of serious effort to better yourself is gone. And that's how a lot of diabetics are. They're convinced they are the losers. The genetic lottery has ruled against them. They've lost out. And there's not a thing they can do but take their medication and hope they don't disintegrate too quickly. But when you begin to realize, I can turn this thing around by the grace of God. Things are getting better. They're not getting worse. Again, motivation just shows up. It just knocks on your door and you open the door. Hi, I'm motivation and I'm here to help you. Well, come right on in. And lo and behold, you find it's all done. And when you've got your blood sugar down, you may find some people who hear your story say, boy, you've sure got the willpower. But it really wasn't that at all. You just simply got the motivation. If you've recently been diagnosed with diabetes and you've just discovered this channel, let me recommend that you go to our Uploads page, which will give you access to every diabetic video we've posted since we began. As you work your way through all our videos, I believe you'll find the help you need. A link to our Uploads page is in the description.